something we all need. Gotta have it now if you wanna succeed. Striving, surviving, that's no doubt. Sticking together, we gon' find a way out. So all you young people, give it your. So all you young people, give it your. So all you young people, give it your. So all you young people, give it your.
Good afternoon, the back community. Thank you as always for staying involved. Thank you for staying engaged. Today I have the pleasure of actually interviewing a poet. And before I give this person his formal introduction, I have to go ahead and give him his flowers. I met this young man at a poetry event here in DC. And he came up. Everybody know, if you like a poem, you're gonna be snapping, But from the time I came into the event, Gabriel actually introduced himself. I got a chance to kick it with him, and he told me about a book that he was authoring, and I got into him about his process and what he was doing. But to see what he has produced, it was something that I knew I wanted to connect with him on and to bring him on the back community at some particular point in time. And he patiently waited for his turn, and we have him on today. So without further ado, I'd like to formally introduce Gabriel Gaiusbayode.
Yes, sir.
All right.
Gaiusbayode.
Yeah. Welcome to the back community. And thank you for affording me your time today.
No, thank you for having me, man. Like I said before, I'm excited. You made me fall right back in love with this book because I haven't looked at it in some bit of time. So yeah, I'm locked in.
Nice. And like I said, man, I know I met you in DC. I think you were in Hyattsville at the time, but I think you just let me know you're in the O now, right?
Yeah, from
Shout out to
PG County
Ohio.
back to Ohio. Yes, sir.
All right. Well, listen, man. I know I always try to do my best to give you a great introduction, but
Yeah.
sometimes I might not be able to do it as great as you do. So, in my
Yeah.
first formal question to you, I always like to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself to the back community. So, Gabe, here's your opportunity to introduce the back community to who you are.
Yeah. So I'd say, start things off, of course, Gabriel Gaiusbayode. I was born in Alabama, raised in Columbus, Ohio. Also, both my parents, Nigeria, Yoruba tribe. So I spent some time in Nigeria as well. Right now, I'd say the biggest thing about me, I'm a graduate from the University of Dayton in mechanical engineering, ironically, and am still pursuing my master's in mechanical engineering now at Ohio State University. And I'm also a writer, which is why we're all here. I love writing. Been writing since I was 13 years old, inspired by Shel Silverstein, eventually inspired by James Baldwin. And it started as poetry, and I'm still writing poetry. I'm hoping to write a fiction series within the next 5 to 10 years. And I love it. I'm passionate about writing, passionate about creating. And I also engage in activism in some capacity throughout my life and try and make sure that anything that I'm doing in some way, I'm finding ways to give back or be involved and not forget the people that are underrepresented. I wouldn't say just underrepresented, but underprivileged, and forgetting our people, because we can get to a space of privilege where we forget where we came from and forget the opportunity we have to pull people up, because compassion is one of the things that got me here, not just my own fruition, not just my own stoicism, not just my own perseverance. So that's a little bit about me.
Okay. I love it, man. And we're here to celebrate your writing, but congratulations to you. Mechanical engineer is nothing. It is a very prestigious choice for you to choose to study. My best friend is a civil engineer.
Yeah.
So congratulations to you, because I know
Thank you.
there's hella opportunities there if done correctly, but to be
Yeah.
able to have such a defined interest in engineering, but also have such a creative passion for writing. Congratulations to you on that one.
God has blessed me in that aspect, man. I'd say with that foresight and awareness, just be able to tap into both. I'm blessed.
Okay. Okay. All
Yeah.
right. And you mentioned a little bit earlier in regards to who inspired you to write, but I have to ask, got to start off by saying, what was it about writing that you fell in love with?
Man, I was a romantic kid. If I'm being honest,
Ah,
man, I was a romantic kid.
you've been bringing ladies
Oh,
flowers for a long time.
man, talk about it, man. But from the corner stores, fingernail polish for Valentine's Day, I was a kid for sure. But I remember writing poems about my crushes. But I would say it's always been a form of introspection and expression.
Mhm.
So whenever something was going on, or it developed more into that. When I was a kid, it really was just rhyming and, like I said, writing about my crushes. When I got to high school, it was one of the ways that I could show appreciation for people. I didn't have a lot of money when I was younger, so sometimes it was a way I would write a gift for somebody, to show that I would appreciate them. And you know, writing about people that had passed, and my uncle in some capacity, and that really developed into spoken word and, like I said, some form of activism when I was in high
Mm,
school, because we had an unfortunate situation in Columbus, Ohio, where 13-year-old boy Tyree King was murdered by the Columbus Police Department. And he was, I guess, in some form of chase. They saw a BB gun and they fired. And I was very me and my basketball team members were very hurt because we had saw him in the neighborhood. Like, we would see him
mm,
consistently, and he looked like he was 10. He didn't even look like a 13-year-old. So it was just like, what mentality do you have to not only not have some empathy in the report of the situation, but to just see a kid and be provoked to do that? How do you fear a kid like
mm,
that? So it really developed into an outlet about my interpretation on how society treats Black people, and kind of a conduit for me to help assist and educate our minds and radicalize us in some ways. And I think I got to a point, especially after I graduated from undergrad, when I was in less leadership positions, in less positions for people to be calling on my name, and really sitting with myself and determining what direction I want to go, to where it just became bigger than that. It's one of those things to where you stop looking outward and you start looking inward, so that you develop. And I really developed my inner voice, because I knew there were certain things I didn't want to write about anymore. There were certain things that didn't sound like me. And I think this book is one of the gifts to come out of me taking that time to meditate and taking the time to be introspective and realize there's a plethora of things I want to write about beyond the struggle, including the struggle, but philosophically and morally or ethically. This book is really a kind of a testament on ethics, and in this case, it's family ethics, and fatherhood in some capacity, and it still has the culture in it. You know what
mm,
I'm saying? It's not me trying to show the culture. The culture is in whatever I write, because I'm from the culture. You know what
mm,
I'm saying? So, with that being said, my mentality has changed to where it doesn't make me any less radical, but it makes me understand what it means to be an artist, understand what it means to be me, and understand what it means to be a writer a little bit more
mm.
authentically. You're not
Okay.
you don't always have to impress people, and it's not about impressing people. It's about writing the truth, writing your truth, and sharing that in some capacity, and letting the world kind of raise whatever that truth is. So,
Mm. I love it. I love it, man.
yeah.
And it's it and just in hearing how a situation or a story like that, like witnessing something as traumatic as watching someone that young, or knowing of someone that young pass away. These types of experiences change us, right?
Yeah.
They change who we are. They change our outlook on life, and they change our zest or our passion for living, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's extremely important. And just like you, I think I started off probably with poetry. I started off with poetry, then I became a full out rapper named Real, and then from there, navigated at some point later in my life to being an author. But
Yeah,
it was
yeah,
very important to do exactly what you described was being introspective, right? You were taking the time out to self reflect, to examine who you are, and in my experience, I like to think that the people who take the time out to examine how they feel, who they are, right, they are able to produce some of the most thought provoking works because they've done the work first on themselves. I
yes,
think as society, we focus so much on the external and just how other people are viewing us, how other people look, what other people think, less about on what I think, how I feel, where I've grown, where I have still room to mature. So, and a
yeah. I
lot of
had
what you
to.
said is what I got.
Yeah, I had to realize that there was a point in time when I was more focused in the performing arts that I wasn't writing genuine truth because I knew that some of my opinions might be controversial, and I put a muzzle on myself as an artist
Mm,
and as a writer. And what you don't want to do is become a slave to opinion or a slave to expectation. That is a chain that you don't want to put on your art. It limits your expression. And most artists, we all start from art being an extension of us expressing ourselves. If the extension of us are expressing ourselves becomes a medium for us to satisfy audience that don't even fully know us as human beings,
mm,
we're creating a system of internalized slavery that will make the art that you're producing no longer be something you
mm,
love, but it'll be something you dread, something you're bitter. And it also you'll be attempting to satiate an unsatisfiable thing, which
mm,
is people's expectations. You have to be open and willing to receive criticism, and don't even go into art with the mentality that you'll receive criticism. Just go into art with the mentality that you're delivering something to the world. And the realistic understanding or the realistic nature of the world is that there's going to be people that love things and there's going to be
mm,
people that don't love things. And
mm.
it's okay to have both because that's a balance necessary for us to move forward. You have to find peace with that seesaw, have find peace with kind of that turbulence,
Mm.
and perspective shapes a lot of that. So I had to learn that. I had to learn
Okay.
that.
Okay, man. I think we all do, right? And in some shape or form, just realizing that, you know, I have this philosophy that I got from a book, The Pact, the Three Doctors from Newark, New Jersey. But
Mm-hmm.
when I read the book when I was still an undergrad, it was something so profound at the end of the book that it was a saying in there that I taught to all my fraternity brothers who came behind me. And it's after a while, the noise blends into the background and you learn to function in spite of it. Right.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just like, at some point, you get to this place of comfort and contentment, and you can block out everything else, what everybody says you're supposed to be doing, what you think you're supposed to be doing, and just falling into place where you are. Right.
Love that.
Yeah. But
I
let me
love how I
see.
was
Let me
able
see.
to visualize that too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I like about the Black community is that, I get a chance to showcase my guests in a way that I don't think that they always get a chance to get highlighted or showcased, right? Because
Yeah.
oftentimes, in our adult capacity, we're working and we forget some of the things that have made us to who we are. But you said something earlier that stood out to me about like you are where you are today, not just by your own strength, your own moxie, the sacrifices of other people. So
Yeah.
one of the things I want to ask
100%.
you next is thinking about your younger self, right? I think um, there's something to be said about the things that we wish we knew then, right? And this is going to lead me into your book. But I had to ask this one first. It's like, but thinking about your younger self, what is something you wish that someone would have told the younger version of you that you now know that you needed, but you might not have gotten. So thinking about your younger self, what is something you wish someone would have told the younger Gabriel?
Ooh. I think the most important thing that I needed to hear was, yeah, I think the most important thing that I need to hear more of, and I'm going to say it because I did hear it from some people, but I needed to hear that in some way, shape, or form, that I wasn't doing too much. Because
Mm,
I think I've always been passionate and ambitious to where my hands are dipped in a lot of things at the same time. And when you're around other people that aren't used to moving with that kind of speed, they project their miles per hour onto you. You know what I'm saying? They project their speedometer onto you. And it may not always be coming from a bad place. It may
mm,
legitimately be their concern because you're moving with a weight and a capacity that doesn't seem sustainable. However, one of my mentors from my alma mater, she knows how to coach me. And I would
mm,
consider myself a pretty coachable person, but I would say I'm also very well read in some capacity to where that may make it seem like I know everything to where it's like he's got it together.
mm,
He'll be fine. Where it's like, I still need some mentorship. But I would say I needed to hear I wasn't doing too much a lot more because now when one thing that I struggled with, one thing that I really struggled with was doubting myself
mm,
a lot when it came to trying to do the things that I love and the things that I feel like are what make me me. So, for instance, engineering and poetry, those two things are two things I know I'm passionate about, two things I know I'm going to be doing for a very long time, if not forever. And they're two things I'm trying to, make work, make
mm.
work in terms of time. And a lot of times when I was once again trying to approach various different projects, there wasn't the affirmation I needed to really. There wasn't the affirmation, or I don't even think it's the affirmation that I needed. It just was, I didn't need to hear I was doing too much
Gotcha.
because I do listen to people. I do listen to people and I do try and not let ego or my pride kind of solidify my ears to reason, because
Right.
some people may be right and some people care. But I think that I really needed that because I built a habit of counting myself out. I built a habit of fear,
Mm,
when it comes to approaching big things. And if I'm asking if I'm capable of doing it,
mm,
am I doing too much? That's a habit that I had to break because that wasn't really helpful for the big goals that I had. Of course, I need to be more organized. Of course, I need to be more realistic in some aspects, or maybe not more realistic in some aspects. Just the best thing that I think you tell somebody that's passionate about multiple things, or you don't really tell them anything. You ask them questions so that they can answer what they're trying to do and understand what they're trying to do. Because if somebody asked me questions about things I was interested in, I may have answered enough questions to be like, oh, I'm not that interested in it. But eventually there are certain things that don't go away, like engineering, like poetry, like community work. And I think that's what I really needed to hear more of, especially throughout college. You really don't want to have a mentality of fear. At least I don't want to have a mentality of fear when it comes to what I'm doing and whether I'm capable of doing what I do.
It's making me think of, like, to whomever might have said that to you.
Mhm.
It might have been because I can hear myself saying this to my younger cousin right now, right?
Yeah.
So, and it came from a place, and like I said, one of the smartest young men, and I've known him his entire life. One of the smartest young men I've ever been around, right?
Hmm.
But he's got his hands in so many different pots, right?
Yeah.
And from a person who opened up their first business at how old was I? It was my year out of college. I started my
Hmm.
own 501(c)(3), mentoring young men 12 to 18. So I've been mentoring young men for over 20 years now. right? And but in him, I seen burnout,
Yeah.
right? And sometimes it takes you listening to somebody else to someone else's cautionary tale, not so
Hmm.
much to like kill your juices or your spirit, but also to just preserve it so that way
Yeah.
whatever that juice is that's keeping you going, you can have it even longer before the
Yeah.
world weighs down on you, before family weighs down you, before expectation weighs down on you. So
Yeah.
I always told him, I said, listen, rather than stretching yourself thin, take your time, right? You're gonna have
Yeah.
the rest of your life to be an adult. You're gonna have the rest of your life to pay bills, right? Enjoy this moment right here, right?
That's another thing. You actually add another thing that I would tell myself is, plan for the long run. Don't try
Mm,
and rush everything in once, because that's definitely something that would contribute to being overwhelmed, would contribute to burnout, is feeling like I have to do everything now. Whereas like even with writing this book, I wouldn't say I'm pressed for time, even though I do have some tangible goals that fit timelines. I'm going to be doing this for a while,
mm,
so living my life with that mentality that I'm investing for the long run. I'm going to be doing this for a period of time, so I don't have to rush. I don't have to move with desperation, because being frantic can also make you more susceptible to making mistakes. But I do think when it comes to somebody that does have their hand dipped in a few pots, it's trying to make them, because I did have some advice that made me limit my plate, but the way it was delivered was an aspect that
mm,
was, do you understand these different things that you're in? Do you understand that you might not have time for this because it'll
mm,
take away from you being able to be your best self here? And that spoke to me in a different way, because the reason that I'm involved in these different spaces, because I truly believe I'm being my best self in all of these. But if being here is taking away from me achieving that goal,
mm.
then I'm able to realize something, because you're engaging in these activities for a purpose. You're engaging in these activities for a reason. So I think, I always understand it comes from a place of, at least for, some people, it comes from a place of love, but the delivery doesn't always
Facts,
match, because it instills the wrong habits for me,
facts.
and will make me be more susceptible to question myself versus question the best course of action.
Mm.
You know what I'm saying? And yeah, I've shifted that mentality where, I'm not afraid of taking risks as much as I kind of developed. And I'm still integrating risk taking with wisdom, So yeah.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Well, I had to throw that on top of what you said, but
Hmm.
and like you said, what is it? Time, tact, delivery. All those three things definitely matter. So
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
yeah. But let me see, man. I have you here today
Yeah.
because I couldn't wait to talk to you about your book, right?
Hmm.
I couldn't wait to talk to you about witnessing struggles that your brother went through. I couldn't
Hmm.
wait to talk about how those struggles, like oftentimes people see struggles with one person and never really realize how those struggles affect the other people around that person as
Yeah.
well. Yeah. So, without further ado, I'm going to get to the book. So,
Let's get to it.
when you get older, tell us about the title of When You Get Older. Why
Yeah.
did you choose that title? And, what is the premise behind the book?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So I'll
so
start with the premise that is kind of my the way that I describe the book all the time, is that When You Get Older is a story about an uncle that loses faith in God when he witnesses his big brother lose custody of his daughter. So the book is him trying to rebuild that relationship with his niece, and simultaneously him finding a way to rebuild a relationship with his niece is in some capacity him finding his way back towards his faith in some
Mm,
way. So it's really this struggle of feeling like his world is falling apart because he's watching his family fall apart, starting initially with his brother losing custody of his daughter. So that's the premise of the book, and I titled it "When You Get Older" because not only is it a story that tracks an uncle growing through time. It's not just a collection of poems. I always emphasize it's not just a collection of poems. I've written it like a fictional story. I've written it to where the uncle in chapter 1 is not the same uncle in chapter 2. The poems in chapter 2, there are poems in chapter 4 that disagree with the poems in chapter 2 because this character is developing over time. And if you read it as just a collection of poems, you might miss the story that's being communicated and unraveling before our eyes. So there is a character growth from a first person perspective, but also this book is a collection of poems written to his niece to help her cope with the lost time. So when she gets older, the hope is that she's old enough and more mature enough to read these collection of poems so that she understands her past and, more importantly, doesn't make the same mistakes her uncle made, which was develop a bitterness that was potentially harmful to himself and to the people he cared about. And for somebody that he loves, that he knows loves, and he knows his niece loves her family, it's important that the separation from her father, the separation from her family, unwarranted, unjustified, and out of her control, she doesn't internalize that and become bitter. So when she gets older, she reads this and is able to make peace. And it's also important when you get older because there's a lot of information that it's almost some capacity of not just a love letter, but an act of love, because you should read this when you get older, because despite our situation, you deserve innocence of a child. You deserve a childhood. And I wouldn't want you to read this when you're a child, because that's exposing you to information that could stifle how you navigate childhood. So it's another thing with this book, that another lesson, it's patience, it's timing. It's not being desperate for an outcome. It's being connected and rooted in yourself so that you can navigate a journey. And whatever the journey holds, whether that's storms, you're deeply rooted in your purpose and you're deeply rooted in your standing so that you don't waver. And that's something that I think this title embodies, that entire symbolism. When you get older, this is not just a story. It's a story made for a later time. And the last poem in the book is actually titled "When You Get Older." And it's funny because it says, "I hate that so many windows close, that we may wait until you get older to play games made for a child." But that's the reality of the situation. We may have to wait. It may not be as pretty as other families. It may not be as traditional, but we're still going to make something out of this. You just need to keep living your life as a child. We're going to be there. That's what the uncle has to develop too. But it's not easy. It's not easy. Yep. You navigate a struggle through this book,
Listen, I love it. And one of the things I probably didn't tell you when you told me about the book early on was because, I got 3 kids. So my 2 youngest ones live with me, but my oldest son doesn't. And, his mother and I went through a lot of that struggle for a very long time. And there's still some lingering effects of that as well before we were able to come back together and try blending. Right. But so I always knew that your book was something that I wanted to dive into because, I said, oftentimes people only look at the focal points, but you don't really realize how a situation can bleed out into all of these other areas and how it affects, how a family grows up, how a kid grows up, whether or not a kid believes if they're enough, whether or not if a kid believes they're loved enough. So I didn't tell you that earlier, but I knew it was gonna come out at some point.
I appreciate you sharing, brother.
Yeah,
absolutely.
Yeah, but why the picture of the gentleman in the rain with the umbrella? I love that so much.
Yeah, this is, oh my gosh, like I said, I love talking about this book because it makes me fall in love for it. From my perspective, I understand that it has its flaws, but from my perspective, it's close to a flawless book, which sets the bar for me personally very high. But I know I can go higher, which is a beautiful a beautiful place to be in as a writer and just as a person. But that's the model, based off of myself and my niece. It's modeled based off of us, the main character, the uncle and the niece, that's constantly referred in the book. And it's really representing. So there's a few things. There's a lot of symbolism in this, but first and foremost, holding the umbrella. And she's more under the umbrella than him. He's still getting wet. So it's really to understand this book, you're navigating a storm. And a storm is constantly a metaphor alluding to the family struggle within the book. And the storm also is alluded to Noah, the ark, the flood that destroyed kind of humanity. There's this biblical kind of reference, but that destruction is really family. It develops this rage towards God. That's the uncle. But throughout the book, he's constantly thinking of protecting his niece. And this umbrella is like, keep you from getting wet from the storm. That's really the purpose of this book.
I love it.
How much? It's not that we can't keep you from being in the storm because you have to go outside. But while you're outside, how can we protect you as much as possible, even with the distance, And I think there's a poem in chapter 1 titled Reasonable Doubt, where it says, deer often die in the night where cars don't stop roaring, but why shouldn't we cross the street? Like, why shouldn't we take a chance? Why shouldn't we take a chance on love, on family? And I think when you have the uncle and the niece at a red light preparing to cross the street, it shows them that they're taking a chance on love together. It's kind of the risk in this scenario, because you have to develop, once again, this book is a story, and it really develops to where two parties have suffered from this and have to make a conscious decision to choose to love, because that's another lesson. Love not just being an emotion, love being a choice, where you choose to love, you choose to persevere through the storm in spite of what you're going through and what you're dealing with. And that's really the beauty of the cover, as well as her having the ladybug on her back, the ladybug backpack. That's pretty adorable, because a ladybug represents good fortune. And she's often referenced in the book as a ladybug because that's what she meant for the family. She meant good fortune. She meant good luck. So constantly we're trying not to abandon good fortune, trying not to abandon her, So that's really the in-depth analysis of the book cover.
Okay, and I love it, and that's one of the beauties of getting the chance to speak to the author directly. A lot of those subtle points, right? You never get a chance to put it together, and sometimes people don't give it to you because they want you to leave your own interpretation to what it is. But for me, it like helps me to enjoy it even more, because every time I see it, I'll remember the reference of everything else that's behind it. Right. I'm covering myself, but not as much as I'm covering her. Remembering the ladybug, right? I'm remembering it's this journey. So anywho, thank you very much for
thank
that.
You, man.
Yeah, thank you. And
I got it right in front of me, so
and I gotta ask. I have to ask, because I also know that the book dives into trauma, and how we heal, or how those experiences affect us. So being a person that is one step removed from it, because in this book it's about your journey, your story with your niece, but ultimately its impact on your brother. But how do you feel as the brother, as the uncle, that family dynamic affected you, or affected your family's, not necessarily legacy, but your family's story? How did that story impact you? I know we're talking about Ladybug at some points, but how did it impact you as the brother, as the uncle, in that relationship?
So I'll say two things. Because I'm probably gonna speak in a bit of a messy way, and I'm saying that because this book is modeled off my life, but I also approach it from a fiction because it's not an autobiography. There's a story I'm trying to tell. So like, if this was based off my life from start to finish, there's so many characters that I've left out, but I chose pretty much the fundamental characters: my mom, my niece, her family in some capacity and modeled this story based off of that. So I'm going to answer that question two ways. I'm going to answer it personally, but for the character in the book as well. So how it affected me, I'd say that personally, yeah, and I think it's same in the book as well. So personally, I'd say that when you witness, I'll start with a quote that I got from a movie. I wish I had the movie off the top of my head, but one of the biggest things that this book reinstills is family values. And there's a quote from this movie that says, if it takes a village to raise a child, it takes a village to abuse one. And what you see is there's two parties in this book. There's the immediate party you're introduced to, which is the niece's father's side of the family. And kind of luring in the shadows is her other side of the family, which is, I guess for you could say, for the sake of the story, the antagonist, because they're preventing the father and the family from seeing, their good fortune, their niece. And I'd say for the uncle, the struggle, and then I'll bring it back to me because I want to really highlight that struggle that we're going through in the book. The struggle is that you have to take into context, which is what chapter one establishes. Chapter one establishes a lot of context, a lot of world building, which is the dynamic of the father side of the family and the dynamic of her uncles, right? Because she only has uncles. So the first things first is there's a small family. There's a poem called Small Family Ambitions, which highlights a flaw in the family, which is that because the family is small, it really stops at the brother when it comes to being the youngest in the family. He was the youngest until the niece. He says that in the book. When she's born, she represents more than just humanity. To a small family, she is now this hope. She's bigger than life. She's this destiny. Like, she's a gift from God. She represents that we're no longer going to struggle anymore because there's a history that is alluded that this family has endured suffering, hellish suffering in the past. So her birth represents this salvation in some capacity. So that's one context that's important. The other context that's important is the relationship between the brother and between the uncle and the father. The uncle's brother is like a father to him. That's another very important context. So the niece is also like his little sister. That adds emotional context to why the uncle is internalizing the pain, because he's technically seeing his father suffer, and he's technically not able to build a relationship with his little sister, but he's not also be able to be supportive like a brother and protective like an uncle. So that's another context that's important. And then there's a genuine love for his family. So his family suffering is traumatizing for him. That's the foundational struggle and the flaw that he has in book one that we're going to navigate throughout this book when it comes to faith building and a relationship with God is he interprets struggle as God not favoring his family, which is not true. And that's one thing or I'm not going to make a concluded statement or absolute statement, but that's a conversation that this book is having. Is struggle a sign of lack of favor from God? So those are the two contexts that's important. And he's navigating this struggle that eventually develops some level of imposter syndrome. There's one of my favorite poems of chapter 2 is called Fears of Falling Short. And if I could pull it up real quick, it writes, when exceptionality is undefined, it becomes a bubble easy to pop. It can mimic flight, but it's not going up. It's falling slowly. It may look like a perfect sphere, but it's a fragile, brittle passion. So it shows kind of this, how he's pretending to be perfect. He's pretending to be okay because he's trying to outlive his circumstance. He's trying to be excellent in spite of all this, pain going on around him, but it's brittle. All it takes is one needle and that sphere will pop. He's not flying. Bubbles don't fly. They're falling slowly. But if you don't understand what's happening, you'll confuse it with flight. So there's really this internal struggle that bleeds into romantic relationships. And I could talk about that more from a personal standpoint, but it bleeds into romantic relationships. And the climax of the book is in chapter 3. The uncle's niece is physically harmed by the other side of the family, the stepdad that is now in the picture. And that's established through a poem titled The Wooden Spoon. And the challenge now is the uncle is in a position where he wants to do physical harm to the stepdad in this book. But the challenge is he knows the consequences of that, and kind of trigger warning, but he faces a moment of feeling self-harm to himself because he's powerless in the midst of this suffering. And once he perseveres through that and kind of has an epiphany after looking at his niece and seeing what harm he could be doing, he goes through this stage of healing and finally breaks to a moment to where it's now, let me try and build a relationship with you. In spite of all this lost time, let's try and make this thing work because I haven't been able to. Like the thought of it, the work, it's tiring, exhausting. So contextually, that's the struggle that the brother is navigating through this book. Like his family's so important to him, and his niece's birth was such a canon event that her being taken out of it is affecting his entire perspective on life from top to bottom. And that's the, like I said, relationships romantically, relationships with his family, relationships with himself. It really affects and I'd say this is just a family guy, but this really affects, his perspective. And I'd say for me personally, writing this book really helped because I think a gift you have as a writer is almost like it's almost like your future self. You kind of give yourself lessons to where you have to constantly go back to this book. And this book helped me with letting go because there were some times I know like I said, I'm familiar with this story. So, being able to let go and not be enraged by everything and truly be committed to the long journey of this. It doesn't look like I envisioned. We talked about expectations at the beginning of this call. It doesn't look like I envisioned, but that doesn't mean the love can't be there. You know what I'm saying? I just have to choose to do so, in some capacity. And that's the struggle that the uncle navigates. I took it a little away from the personal side because I really
that's okay.
For the reader.
That's okay. And it's and one it for everybody that's listening, or if you're watching this, it leaves more room for personal interpretation. Right. And that's the beauty of words, right? It's kind of like medicine, right? We can all take the same exact medicine, some Tylenol, whatever milligrams it is, right? But it's going to hit you differently than it's going to hit me, right? It might affect me with a headache. It might affect you with an arm ache, right? So it's just like a reading in and allowing your words to hit everyone that's going to read it differently. And I'm hoping definitely as a result of today's interview that, we can get that book in the hands of a lot more people because I think those types of struggles, those types of healing, we didn't even get into the healing aspect of it because you explained it's the uncle's separation with his relationship with God too. But it also seems like there's a reconciliation at some point of, hey, like you said, you made me think about like sometimes people think when all of the bad things happen, you think that God doesn't favor you. And so that's so far from the truth. You think about Joseph in the Bible and all of the things that he had to endure. Right. And, my family sold me off into slavery. But guess what? I ended up being in the potter's house. So, anywho.
No. You're right on. I definitely do want to touch on one thing because, I've touched on family and spirituality, but relationships. Like I have a poem in chapter 2 that, because this book doesn't sit on romantic relationships, but once again, the way that I write this, it's to almost give the reader a chronological chronological events through poetry. So this is where he's at based on this poem. This is what's happening in his life. And there's two poems right beside each other in chapter 2, Shields of Trauma, Release Shrapnel, and Arrow C. To read a little bit of Shields of Trauma, Release Shrapnel, it states, attempting to love someone you do not understand is like going to college for something you do not want to do. Perhaps it will work out, but optimism can often deny the truth. That is what I tell the lady in my life. She sees mistakes. I see red flags. She sees an apologetic kiss. I see paper promises. She sees our love. I see a broken heart. She sees a family in us. I see us torn apart. So if you take that poem into context, you can see how his family situation has like shaped his outlook and fear of relationships. He fears becoming like his brother and his niece in a situation, being in a situation where he can't love, Absolutely. It's like his outlook is crippled, and that's affecting his ability to love the people that care about him. And I think that's something that's important. How many people do we push away when we're hurting because we're afraid of
more hurt,
especially when we've been betrayed? How do we persevere and find strength when we've been betrayed? Because that's hard, because now you have to find a way to trust again. And life is all about trust. We go places and we're not anxious because we trust our safety. We sleep and we're not anxious because we trust our safety. Not everybody has the privilege of that. And that's the awareness that we have to have, is that being able to trust and feel safe really is a privilege. And sometimes it takes strength. I think always it takes strength to develop it, because we have to develop some level of armor to understand that the world is not our enemy. Nature is not our enemy. We exist because we're, a part of this cycle of living. So how do you reduce the anxiety or the fear of safety? That's kind of the goal we all have, even as a community. But you can see his outlook is fractured. He can't even trust somebody that may truly love him, because they see an apology after they make a mistake. He sees a red flag. He sees his future falling apart when it was something just so, it could have been something minuscule, but domino effect.
Okay. And last point for me, you're making me think of the attachment theory, right? And how so much of who we are as adults is still directly tied into our experiences and our interactions with love early on, from our parents, from our guardians. And those things stay with us until we get to a place of being able to dive into why I am the way that I am. Right.
Yeah, absolutely.
But let me see, man. I'm taking you somewhere else right now. I got 60 seconds in a game called Rapid Fire. Right.
Okay.
And this is gonna allow me to get a chance to know you a little bit better. Don't worry, it's not gonna put you on the Budweiser hot seat for anything that'll get you in trouble. All right.
I'm locked in.
Are you ready?
Locked in. Yeah,
All
man.
Right.
Let's get it.
All right. First things first. Do you have a hidden talent? I know you're in engineering and poetry, but is this something about you that people don't know that you are talented and you do well? What is that?
I can draw pretty good. And I also like to Latin dance. Fun fact.
Nice. All right, let me see. What is your favorite season of the year?
Autumn, easy. And the book is really kind of highlights that a little bit, but autumn, easy.
Okay. If you had to choose a favorite shoe or sneaker, what style of shoe would that be?
I'm gonna go with either Bread Retro 1s or Retro 11 tuxedos.
Okay. All right. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be and why?
I'm going to say somewhere. It's going to be between America and Africa, just because I'm passionate about helping solve the social kind of crisis that we face. So, yeah.
Okay, fair enough. If you had a favorite word, what would it be?
Authenticity or stoicism.
I like it. I like it. And let me see. If you had a cheat meal, a cheat dessert, what's your go-to? What's your go-to if you just like, listen, I'm about to pig out today.
Golden Oreos, man, with almond milk,
Woo.
vanilla if I'm really feeling dangerous.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Well, thank you for indulging me in rapid fire.
Yeah, yeah,
I always love it the most because, like I said, I get a chance to learn so much more about the people that I have on that
yeah,
most
yeah.
people never really know.
No facts. I get you, man. I get you.
And let me see, man. I'm gonna ask you probably my favorite question in four seasons. I really appreciate this question, and I love it because it hits every one of us differently.
Mhm.
So, if you were to define success, how would you define success for you?
I would define success as making a tangible output, making a tangible impact in the spaces that I sought to make an impact and in the spaces that I didn't imagine I'd make an impact. So I say that because I'm always looking, and that's one of the reasons I'm doing engineering as well. I believe in being well versed in the science because you no longer can just complain about the problems you have or politic about the problem you have. If there's a problem going on, you're problem solving. That's the fundamentals of engineering. It's problem solving and creating the resources that help communities or help Earth, help humanity. So I think that for me, success isn't going to be based on what I consume. It's going to be based on what I can give. And if I'm able to record that in some way, whether that's through somebody's life changed, a community's impact, I think that's always what's going to define success. And knowing that this book was able to actually touch certain people, including myself, I count myself as the artist and the audience member.
Mm.
There's a level of success that I won't deny myself due to greed and desire. I won't let desire get in the way of, what success is from on kind of the humble tip. So that is how I would define success, being able to actually impact tangibly and also intangibly.
I like that too. I like that,
Yeah.
and just thinking about. I know you mentioned the book itself, but it's a major accomplishment that
Yeah.
a lot of people want to embark on. It's a journey a lot of people want to embark on.
Hmm.
It's a journey that a lot of people start and never finish. And I think it's one that um, a lot of people don't understand how much it takes to put so much into a piece of work,
Yeah.
which is why going through my experience, I had to, as an author, one of the things I had to put at the forefront was how much is this experience worth, right? So
Hmm.
if for authors, and this is just for everybody that's out there that's listening, one, I tell everybody, create your own platform to sell your books, because for most authors, the only platform that they have and that they use is Amazon, right?
Hmm.
And Amazon takes a huge portion of royalties of that book. So if you really, I tell all authors now, create your own platform, utilize Amazon too, because some people will never go to your website either which
Hmm.
way, right? So they just we love Amazon. We get Amazon packages here all day, every day, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but in that experience, it was like just realizing how huge the accomplishment of setting out on a task and accomplishing that task, but then also creating something that resonates with so many other people, right? It's a huge accomplishment. So
Yeah.
congratulations to you again,
Thank you, brother.
because it's going to be one among many books that you write, but it's also going to
Yeah.
be one amongst many accolades that you add on to your life.
Yeah, bro. I'm like I said, I'm really proud of this, and when you think of the amount of time that it takes for anybody to write a book, depending on what your schedule is, I think that's a beautiful thing that makes the moment of publication, but also it existing really powerful is you dedicated this time of your life period to this project and you successfully finished it. There's a reward in that time investment, and that's something that I'm always going back to and thinking about, wow, I spent year and a half, working this, and now we're here.
Nice.
Yeah.
Nice. All
Yeah,
right.
man.
All right. Let me see, man. I got two more questions for you, and I'm gonna let you go.
Hey, shoot, man, I'm here.
You got school, you got entrepreneurship going on. You have, like I said, this new life as an author, right? And you have life, like because life be lifing, as I like to say, right?
Nah,
But
facts.
how do you find a healthy work-life balance in all that you are doing right now, Gabe?
I think the biggest thing for me recently is I've been reading a lot more books as I've been, I just turned 25 last month. So my mentality has really been, you know, not just being the dreamer that I was when I was a kid, but actualizing the things that I thought of because I have a responsibility not to, just to myself, but towards the people that look up to me and also towards just humanity in general. So I say that for me, I've been reading this book called Letter on Ethics by Seneca, which has really been helpful in kind of developing a bit of a stoic outlook on life. And that's not necessarily mean being serious. That just means being able to wither whatever storm kind of that comes your way in a manner that's healthy while also adopting some sense of humility to how the world works. Within that, I've been able to kind of develop some inner strength and really be a bit more disciplined. So when managing my work-life balance, it's been like right now, I told you I'm on a bit of a social media hiatus, which is why you had to call me. And I was
Yep.
like, yeah, I know. I
I'm
got it
like,
on my
Gabe, man, you
calendar.
getting my messages? Are you getting my messages?
I was leaving them on red and they DM. Nah, I got you. Yeah, like I've been on a bit of a social media hiatus, so that I can really focus. There's other things I've been cutting out so that I can focus. And, I'm also for an extended period of time because I really want to have like, I know I'm going to re-engage in some of these things, but I really want to develop a structure and put time in towards really focusing and reducing as many distractions as possible, but also still engaging in the things that make me happy, that make me feel good, because those are necessary for me to sustain myself while I'm working. And that's family, that's friends, that's, maybe watching a movie every now and then or watching a TV show and every now and then, or going for a walk in nature. Because, I mean, if you read the book, you probably can put together that I love nature in some capacity. So trying to make sure that I'm doing something to get outside, trying to stay active and healthy through exercise. But I'd say the biggest thing is I'm just not desperate, man. I know there's a goal that I want to reach, so I'm being patient with figuring out the process. Like you have to endure that struggle, and not try to rush it. And right now, I haven't fully figured out a perfect system, but I'm slowly figuring it out. And every week, I'm getting better, whether it's through journaling and reflecting on how much time it took me to do this. Like I'm getting better in trying to establish an actual consistent schedule so that I can have a schedule when writing the next book, so that I can make sure that I'm balanced and disciplined with maintaining my engineering employment or my grad school program. It's just right now being patient and not putting too much on at the same time when I don't have a structure to maintain it. It's developing the structure, it's finding what house I want to invest in, and then putting the furniture in, not just putting the furniture anywhere because that's susceptible to change. So because I have that maturity and that foresight now, I've been patient because a lot of artists, especially writers, we fear, you have to write when the emotion is there. And, I always say that no, especially if you're committed to this as truly as an author and as a career, writing takes work regardless. You know, sometimes it's great when we have that inspiration, but you don't only want to rely on inspiration to write, because writing is truly a gift and it takes work, and work is healthy. Like, it challenges our mind. Sometimes it's not always going to be a day. I have a poem in here that's one of my favorite poems, because I remember when I wrote it and it wasn't what I wanted, and I waited and I came back and I wrote it, and now it's one of the best poems in this book. Like, you have to commit, and that's where discovering that answer for yourself, you have to commit to that process, because this is also kind of, I do think, a spiritual process, being an artist and a writer. There's some intuition that you need that I can't define what that is for somebody. You'll have to know your personality, your character, and whatnot, to know how intuition calls on you. But there are stories that you want to tell. Don't let how you feel dictate whether that story gets told or not. And that's how I'm trying to move. Be patient, understand that me writing this book, I didn't always feel good writing this book, but I had a process that I was consistent to, and trusting that process blessed me with the opportunity to say that I'm a published author. So that's how I'd say that may be a bit of an intangible answer, but I truly believe, like, living my life by philosophies really helps me with staying grounded, because I'm never forgetting the ideal or the integrity that I'm trying to stand upon, the principles that are guiding me through. So that's how I'm approaching it. Like I said, I haven't got it fully ironed out yet, but I'm working. I'm working
Okay.
through it, and I'm figuring it out.
Okay. Okay. And let me see, man, thinking about in 25 years, everything that you've experienced and accomplished, what about your life's path are you most proud of?
Ooh, that is a great question. You know what? I have an answer to that question, and that the answer to that question is a poem, believe it or not.
Ooh.
It is a poem, and the title, it's not in this book. It may be in the next book. It actually probably is going to be in the next book. So, spoiler alert for everybody. The title of this poem is called "The Alcohol, the Needle, and the Thread." So it reads, the scars aren't what make me strong nor magnificent. The alcohol, the needle, and the thread. The painful care in which I've shown my body through the suffering I've endured. The manner in which I've chosen to heal. This is what makes me beautiful. The fact that these lesions are no longer open wounds of shrapnel bleeding onto the next boy who fell and scraped his knee, but a roadmap showing that when life shut my eyes, silenced my voice, and laid me down, I chose to dream. The alcohol, the needle, and the thread. That is that is what I'm most proud of with my life, because, especially my brothers, like, we all know what we've been through as a collective, as a family, my mother, but for me, I know, like, this has not been easy, you know what I'm saying? And not just, what I've endured, what I witnessed people endure, so it's understanding that it hasn't been easy, but I'm so proud I haven't lost the capacity to dream. Like, dream is some form of resilience. It's some rebellion. There's a poem by Dylan Thomas where he says, "Do not go gentle into that good night," and kind of that resistance, always go out fighting in some capacity. And I think I am sorry, my phone battery is acting up, but I'm so grateful that in spite of what's happened in my life, I've had the capacity to, I don't know, just look at life and be like, life is beautiful. Like, walking, going on nature walks, and being able to have those just appreciation of things. I don't know. Sometimes it's like, I wish people could see the world how I see it. I don't think it's anything unique or different. I just think the way it makes me feel is something special. And I guess that's what I'm sharing in life, that perspective, that love, and that dreamer that I have. I think that's my true, not only resilience, but that's one of my gifts, that regardless of what corner I'll be in, regardless of what happens, I'll still be looking forward. I'll still be moving forward. I'll still be creating. I'll still be dreaming, so that's me, man. That's me. I'm proud of that.
Hey, listen, I am proud of every bit of that statement. It's something about writers, right? And listen, I'm going to give you a metaphor. I'm going to give you this poem. I'm going to give you this example. I'm going to give you this philosophy. I got it already, but
the back pocket poems. That's what I call it.
You made me feel every bit of your last statement, right? And it's just like, a lot of it is perspective. Right. It's just like, which angle are we looking at it from? Right. So, congratulations. Kudos to you for choosing to accept the process, go through the process, and be refined by the process.
Yeah.
A lot of times that process is fire. Right. And a lot of times we want to avoid the fire, but we want the beautiful gem that comes out as a result of it. But as I tell everybody, I say to my wife too, be like, we can't skip from A to C. You got to go A, B, C. Right. So congratulations to you for managing to stay persistent and to stay positive, because I think the beauty of your story and the stories that you're telling has the capacity to resonate and change the lives of so many other people. And I think a lot of us have that story, right? But sometimes it's hidden in a lot of shame and embarrassment. So thank you for choosing to step out in front of it. Thank you for realizing that it's actually what makes you you. It's your own superpower. So congratulations to you on that one. And I got to ask you this last thing before you go, because everyone deserves to follow you, even though you're doing a social media fast right now. You're going to be back at some point, and then everyone deserves to get out and go buy this book. So if you don't mind, please let the listeners know where they can follow you on social media and where they can go to purchase this book.
Yeah, so you can follow facts. Yeah, you can follow me on Instagram at Gabriel's Poetry. That's GABRIELS Poetry, POETRY. You can find When You Get Older for $9.99 on Amazon, hard or paperback. And you can also purchase the ebook for 99 cents. If you want to get a introduction before buying the book, at the end of the day, you're still supporting and you're still engaging. That's perfectly fine with me, So that's where you can find the book. And right now I am working on getting a website established, as well as getting my YouTube page going when it comes to content. But one of the most important things is writing the next version or the sequel to this book titled When You Get Lost. So read When You Get Older so that you can be ready for the sequel of that, which has more lessons, more messages. Yeah.
Right. All right. Hey, listen, man, Gabe, I want to say thank you very much for affording me your time today. I wish you continued success in school. I wish you can continued success as a writer. I wish you continued success in healing. I wish you continued success in life, my brother.
Amen.
So,
appreciate you.
Congratulations to you, and thank you for being on the Back community today.
Ashe, brother. I appreciate you. Wish you all the best, man. We'll stay in touch.
Likewise. Have a good one.
All right, brother.
Keep climbing up the ladder. Black lives matter. They matter. So all you young people, give me all. 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 Matter. Black lives matter. They matter. Black lives matter.